Hello, I'm your host, Marcus Garrett. Every week I have entertaining conversations with your favorite influencers and entrepreneurs. Now, let's get started with this week's show. 3, 2, 1. And this is the drop. Leah Collins is the millennial money mentor who focused on premarital financial coaching after her wedding was called off 6 weeks prior to the wedding date due to financial incompatibility. She launched a business that helps couples determine their financial compatibility and plan for their financial future. With half, 50%, or greater, of marriages ending in divorce and finances being the second leading cause of divorce, it is imperative that money discussions are held sooner rather than later. And welcome to the show, Leah.
Thank you for having me.
So I thought, of course, we'd start with the drop. We try to give these people something a little unique that they can only get at the Marcus Garrett Show, where we had entertaining conversations with your favorite influencers and entrepreneurs, of which I think you are extremely qualified for. I think you were at 10.7 or something like that, closing on 11,000 followers. So firmly established in this space. You earned the title of Millennial Money Mentor because you paid off $40,000 of debt, purchased rental property, and increased your credit score to over 800, all within 18 months. Tell the audience a little bit about that experience.
Well, that started back in 2017. I was doing my taxes that year and looking at all of my information. And I think that was the first or second year I had made over 6 figures. And I couldn't figure out where my money had gone. I had nothing to show for it. I really didn't have much savings. My credit score was okay. My investments were pretty low. And I knew something had to change. So there was a course that I took, a financial course. I don't know if you like Dave Ramsey or not. I don't think you're a Dave Ramsey fan.
Hey, I'm not a Dave Ramsey hater either. No, I'm a little paranoid that he's going to offer me the fade one day because I read a blog that wasn't particularly favorable.
No.
But then I ended up meeting him in real life.
That's right.
Pre-pandemic. And he didn't fade me up that time. So, we'll see. It's the long game.
Right.
Is that the course you took?
Yes, that's the course I took. And it just completely changed my mindset on money and how it was managed. And I took that course, and like you said, within 18 months, I had paid off my debt, purchased a rental property, and increased my credit score. And at that point, I decided I wanted to help other people do the same because everyone was reaching out to me, asking how I did it and asking for my help. So that's when I launched Leah Collins, the Millennial Money Mentor.
And I mean, to clarify that space, because people probably going to Google the article, I think it's out there still. In my opinion, the best system is the system that works. So Dave Ramsey, I have my own 4-step system, but I'm agnostic to the system. To me, the system that works is the best system for you. So I don't need the Dave Ramsey hive, coming after me because they are substantive. I don't need that in my life. Them baby steps get you on your marathon. I support it all the way.
And like you said, I think you just incorporate what works for you. His whole program may not work, but incorporate the pieces that do make sense for your life and your situation.
To that point, and maybe I can find it while you're speaking. I actually have it saved on my phone. Why did it work for you? So I know there's 7 baby steps, and I'll get that. You don't have to memorize those, but why did his system work for you?
Well, honestly, it was the first system I tried. So maybe I'm sure there's other good systems out there, but it was just the first one I tried, and it was easy. It made sense. The first step is saving like $500, $1,000. So I had already had that much saved up. It was just really, I think another part of it too was the accountability part. So it's Christian based. My church was offering the course. So just being in that group setting and meeting each week and discussing your situation and your goals and your progress, I think that was a huge part of it as well.
And for the people at home, through the editing movie magic, this will be on the screen for the people watching on YouTube at youtube.com/TheMarcusGarrett. It's 7 baby steps, and it's step 1, which you mentioned, save $1,000. Step 2 is pay off debt. Step 3 is establish an emergency fund. He recommends of 3 to 6 months. Step 4, or baby step 4, is invest. Step 5 is college. Step 6 is pay off the house. And step 7 is give. I'm going to assume this website still works if you want to see those steps for yourself. It's daveramsey.com/get-started. You also have 16 years of corporate finance experience, and you hold a BBA from, shout out to Texas Tech University, and an MBA. I did not know this, from the University of Texas. Did that help in any way, help or harm student debt? Or how did that shape your money mindset?
That hurt as far as student loans were concerned. Like most of us, I think I had about $30,000 worth of student loan debt. If I could do it all over again, I would probably have gone to community college for the first year or two. But for my MBA, I had learned my lesson as far as getting student loans. So for my MBA, I made sure that I joined a company that would pay for me to go back to school, that offered tuition reimbursement. So when I did my MBA, I only came out of pocket $500 for the program.
Nice. So here's the question I told you I wasn't going to tell you in the beginning as we were preparing for this conversation. I want it to be an authentic reaction. So we'll see how it goes. And I open with, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it does seem like you've taken your brand in a new direction. And I'd say 21/2022, exposing more of your, I think you said as a quote, authentic self to the audience. If that is accurate, what has inspired that journey?
Pain has inspired that journey. So in 2019, I got engaged to someone I had been dating off and on for about 10, 12 years. And shortly thereafter, there were red flags. I mean, I guess there were red flags before, but there were more red flags that I noticed when we were engaged. And we were both ignoring them because we had already announced the wedding. He had already spent all this money on a ring. I think at that point we had spent about $40,000 on the wedding. So we were just pushing forward. And then 6 weeks before the wedding, we decided to call it off because it just didn't make sense. So it was very painful, very embarrassing. And it took a year and a half for me to actually announce it. Most people didn't know. My closest friends knew, but most people didn't know. They thought we were still engaged and we had just pushed it off because of COVID. That's what I was telling people. So finally, I decided to turn that pain into power and empower other people in that situation, and just give them tips on financial compatibility and money discussions that they should be having prior to getting engaged. A lot of people want to cover that once they're engaged through premarital counseling, but I think it's very important to have those discussions prior to that.
Either related to that, what does being, because some people are like, well, weren't you authentic the whole time? But what does being authentic, or maybe just authentic specifically, what does that mean to you?
As far as my business, social media, or just in general?
I'd say through social media, because I think at least front facing, that's where people are seeing it. But yeah, I'd say let's start there, through social media.
Okay, I think just being you and telling your story. I'm one of those people. I want to please everyone. I want everyone to like me. I don't want people in my comments talking to me crazy, so I always overthink and overanalyze everything I post. And I think it's crippled me to a point. So one thing I've tried to start doing is just, I wouldn't say I don't care. I still care, but not caring as much what other people think. Because at the end of the day, most people can resonate with your story. Most people want to see who you actually are and who you authentically are, and not just a made-up version of you.
I'm laughing because people are familiar with my ongoing struggle. Although I will say there's been a nice reprieve lately from the comment section. So I was getting strangely trolled, and maybe it was the Instagram algorithm bringing the wrong people to my feed for a while there. So knock on whatever I need to knock on. I haven't had any trolling recently, but I also
what was this? What happened?
I don't know if because you know how you get in the Instagram algorithm and you're on the homepage, you're on the story. So I don't know if a post got featured somewhere. I don't know if a post got shared somewhere, but let's just say a string of blue-eyed square chin gentlemen started making their way into my comment section. And I couldn't understand. This had never happened before, and as I'm saying right now, it hasn't happened recently. So usually when something like that happens, because I've been blogging and freelance writing enough over the years, you've been placed on a place you don't want to be. So usually someone has shared your content with which is not your niche following, and then those followers come over and start harassing you. So if history is any indicator but not a predictor of the future, I'm pretty sure that's what happened. It might happen again because I'm talking about it now. And they'll be like, oh, by the way, you haven't harassed that. But it's been a nice breather. So I was going to say that I could relate to that. And,
it's very stressful because I'm the type of person, I want to say something back, right? And it becomes draining. It's so draining.
Yeah, I think, maybe that's a Texas in it. I think it comes from the same place. It's like, I have no idea what motivates the troll, to be perfectly honest. But it's sometimes I was like, do they realize there's a real person behind the screen? Like, I get to clap. I was like, do you not? Like, I don't think you know me like that. And it's more frustrating because, I got to be the face of this brand and I got to be
right.
Smiley face.
Yeah,
I'm like, I'm definitely, I'm feeling coming sideways at this dude, and it's always a dude. That's another thing I noticed. I just so my following, actually it's evened out, but it used to be like 70% women. And every single time it was a blue-eyed, beach boy, blonde-haired, square-chin guy. They was trolling. Now people have whatever opinion they want, but I noticed there was a theme whenever it was fascinating to me.
I have a friend. I actually stopped talking to him because of that. Like, he just trolls people's social media accounts.
Hey, I guess everybody got to make a living.
I guess.
So I'll liven it up a little bit here. Then we'll come back to later. I've got a ad read here. Y'all know we got to pay some bills around here. And this one comes from Terry Ijeoma. Actually met Terry in a simpler pre-pandemic financial conference we both attended. Y'all know it as #FinCon. That would have been 2020, I believe. That one was in Florida. Shout out to the Panhandle. And at that time, she had around 30,000 followers. Today, she has over 100,000. She began to practice and master her side hustle, trading stocks on the side, and eventually became a successful entrepreneur, making over 10 million in gross sales and being featured in places like The Breakfast Club and Black Enterprise twice by my count. Depending on when you're listening or watching this episode, you might have actually seen her on the show because she is booked. So check that out, Terry Ijeoma, who helps employees like you look to escape the 9-to-5. If you want to learn more or watch that episode, you can visit themarcusgarrett.com/investwithterry. Again, that's themarcusgarrett.com/investwithterry, or scroll to your show description for a direct link. And now, back to the show. Yeah. And we're back with, this is how things start. And we're back with Leah. Hit it this way. Can you give a few examples of frequent topics you've helped with couples facilitate, whether that's around discussions prior to marriage and the tools they need for success?
Absolutely. Well, one of the first things that I have them do is complete a financial compatibility quiz. And we identify areas where they misalign. And we usually focus on those areas. A lot of times, the number one issue is their vision or their goals. So that's where we start from. What are your visions? What are your goals? Not just related to money, just related to your life in general. Another thing that we look at and discuss is roles within the relationship. I know that was a big issue for us. I had one thing in mind, and he had something else in mind, because when we dated, I just thought our roles would continue like that. And he was like, oh no, ma'am. Like, I want something more traditional, which is fine. It's fine if that's what you all agree on. But that comes back to the compatibility part, right? Also, depending on the couple cultural expectations, that's big right now with a lot of people marrying interracially. Me and my fiance, we were both Black. He's Nigerian, and I'm like Black African American. And there are a lot of similarities, but there are huge, huge cultural differences between the two. So that's something we talk about as well. And another thing is financial obligations that you had prior to getting engaged. So that would be family obligations. Do you have parents that you're taking care of? Are you paying child support? Are you paying alimony? Things of that nature. Also, what are your views on loaning money to family members or co-signing for family members? So those are some of the things we talk about. Kids. Do you want to have kids? How many kids? Can you afford these kids? What happens if you can't have kids? Maybe there's infertility issues. Can you afford to pay for treatment? Do you want to adopt? Is that a deal breaker for the marriage? So those are just a few of the topics that we discussed.
And I was going to pull a couple posts for it before I do that. And this is not a trick question. If the answer is no, that is perfectly fine. No is a complete response, folks. No is a complete response. If you are in 2022, no is all you need to offer people. But my question is, you had mentioned that financial compatibility quiz. Is that your own, or is that publicly available for listeners that might want to take it?
It's available on my website for free. So you can go there and download it and take it.
Okay. Give them your website.
It's leahmariecollins.com.
All right. For folks who want to take that compatibility quiz and start a fight this weekend, please go to leahmariecollins.com. After you get over that fight, you can talk to Leah about how to facilitate that conversation more productively. Reframe, as I've learned through my own therapy sessions. So I was going to highlight at least 3. We could do more because I was going to end with some of your favorites. But some of your popular posts that I pulled from your Instagram, which I also believe is tagged at the same, but we'll hit your social medias at the closeout here. One of them, actually, I think it was one of your opening reels, was so you came out fired. Don't put him on child support. Which that's the name of the reel, but it like a plot twist, it goes in a different direction. So why that reel, and I guess what was the inspiration and lessons learned?
The inspiration was, okay, just being completely transparent. So shortly after we called off the wedding, I found out I was pregnant. And yeah.
Nodding because I remember that.
Yeah. So I decided to go the child support route for various reasons. It's just a good idea to protect yourself legally. If something were to happen to him, God forbid, if something were to happen, my daughter still gets money from his estate if he passes away. If I didn't have that agreement, then, who knows what'll happen because we're not married. That money can go to his mother, whoever else he wants it to go to. And there are a lot of other reasons to have a formal enforceable agreement. But when I brought up the conversation of child support with various people within my community, within my network, even within my own family, they just didn't understand it. They were totally against it. And I just couldn't figure out why. It didn't make any sense to me. So that's why I decided to create that reel. What?
I'm not sure what direct. I'm surprised by the surprise, but based on the various and many probably going on right now, probably going on tomorrow, both before and after, regardless when this podcast drops. Conversations have been around it. I guess I'm surprised that people would be against going the child support route, especially in 2022, year of our Lord. I guess go ahead. I'll go ahead and play devil's advocate. I try to be agnostic and objective on this podcast. So what was the other side of the conversation for those people who came to you with that were against child support? What were their justifications or reasons?
Don't get the courts, don't get the state involved in your affairs. That was it. That was the only reason. That was literally the only. I'm trying to think if there was anything else.
I was about to say the states and the courts are already involved in the system. I think I had a lawyer on the show.
You're married, what? It didn't make any sense. I don't know why it's such a taboo topic. I have no idea. I don't understand it. But that was what people would say.
And what I mean by that, for folks who are curious, I think this was from a lawyer interview. I can't remember if it was on my show or that I heard, but she's in all matters, the law already exists, so it supersedes if you don't have a document in place, whether that's prenup, child support, estate planning. So people are like, I don't want to get the courts involved, and then someone passes away and the courts are involved because you ain't got these documents in place.
Exactly.
So, not legal or tax advice. You can so you can find your own for that, which this is all informational purposes for these conversations, but I'm going to be.
And I think a lot of it too is just ignorance. Like a lot of people don't realize that what you just said.
True.
And I think with more education, that's one of the reasons I wanted to put it out there and educate people more on it. And I really want to talk about it more, but it's back to the whole, I'm a people pleaser. I'm scared what people are going to say about me. So I may educate people a little more about the child support issue and how it actually works.
It's fair. I mean, it's a difficult conversation, and I'll go ahead and open it up because got a few thousand listeners that will be listening to this. I think that'd be a good panel discussion. So if there's a subject matter expert, please hit me info@themarcusgarrett.com or drop it in a 5-star review for a shout out on a future episode. If you're listening to this on the podcast, drop it in the YouTube description if you're watching the video, and we'll see what happens. I'm soliciting an open response, which is could go several different ways.
Right. That would be.
I'm going to screen share, and I told you if my internet can handle it, we'll see how this one goes. We did so another point for the influencers out there. We did in your case, a gram for gram share. I've done a pod for pod share as well. So you can find her at the Leah Marie Collins on Instagram. You can find me at the Marcus Garrett. That is a coincidence. I'm just literally realizing there's a D in front of yours. But you shared tips from a former fiance. I'll walk to, I think it's 3 slides. So let's hit a couple of these. I feel like I hope like people are doing wedding cancellation insurance. Let me jump to some of the controversial ones. Okay, let's talk about premarital counseling before you get engaged. Why? What does the premarital counseling do?
Well, before you propose to someone, don't you want to know their views on religion? Don't you want to know if they want to have kids or not? Don't you want to know how they manage their finances? Like all of that should be taken into account before you even propose, number one. Number two, like I was saying before, once you get engaged, it's so much harder to walk away from the situation. Money's been spent. There's a social stigma behind calling the wedding off. And people just press forward and ignore character flaws and all kinds of red flags. So it's just easier to do it up front before you even get engaged and announce to everyone that you're going to get married, like I did.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the once everyone knows, it also feels like everyone's in the planning phase. So for those who in full transparency as well are not aware, I'm engaged in wedding planning right now. And I should know this, 8 months out as the date of this recording. It hasn't been that bad yet, but it has been fascinating. Everyone's a wedding planner now. We have a wedding planner, but everyone's a wedding planner now. So they're like, oh, you should do this and do that. You got to have it open barred. You got to invite this many people. And yeah, it's COVID, but I wouldn't require a mask or shots. I'm like, y'all about to get this wedding canceled.
Yeah. I had invited people from my wedding. Yeah. I recruited people from my bridesmaids, from my bridal party. Yeah, everyone has an opinion.
We're 6 months in, and everything you just described is already taking place, and I'm sure will continue to be so. Now, mind you, I'm thrilled and excited. And also, like I would say typical man, but in this particular regard, it's easier for me because people are like, am I invited? No. I don't know you like that. This is very expensive. It's a pandemic and it's open bar. Like, if we wasn't cool the last 10 years, we're not going to be cool for this one day wedding. Like, exactly. Yeah. It's easy for me.
Right.
And go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, I was saying the other thing that shocked me was people who were single wanted to like bring a date. I'm like, you're not about to go get some random person just so you have a +1 at my wedding and expect me to pay for it. Like, if anything, single, come to the wedding single and meet other singles. But people like really would go out and find some random person just so they wouldn't be alone.
Yeah, I'm not even and this goes to the paranoia point. I'm not even going to say the number we're allowed to invite out loud because no one but us knows. But I can tell you that number has grown and shrunk, and we've got space. But we might go under because the wrong people are stressing me out. I just put it that way. Right. But the invitations are out there, so if you haven't gotten one, probably by the time this show drops, I'm just gonna let that awkwardly trail out. You can draw your own conclusions. And we're going to have security, so don't be showing up at my wedding thing. You're just going to walk up in that mug. Anyway, another one. I actually probably should hit this first for people who saw this at home. I'll bring the screen back up. But it was, let me go back to the front here. It was tips from a former fiance. Not particular order to list, but it was have money discussions early within the first few dates. Please elaborate. I'm sure people might be fascinated by them. What's the first few dates and what's the discussion to have?
Okay. So you don't have to start off like, what's your credit score? How much money do you make? But there are subtle ways to bring up money discussions, right? So like, say you're looking for a new job, you can talk about that and how you're negotiating your salary, or you can talk about how you're in the process of purchasing a property. And then naturally the conversation is going to turn to the state of the economy and the real estate market right now. So there are ways to bring it up subtly, right? And then eventually the conversation will evolve. But I definitely have those discussions up front. And for me, it's easy because I'm the millennial money mentor and I talk about my business all the time. So that's a great way for me to initiate it as well.
That's fair. I do have a book called Debt Free or Die Trying, so I can easily just segue into that. I mean, no, let me be very clear. Based on the conversation I just had earlier, this was 5 years ago in which I was having these conversations. I have not had to have this conversation with anyone new in 5 years. But back in the day, yeah, back in the day, way back in the day, 5 years back in the day, I could be like, I wrote this book, Debt Free or Die Trying. So about the debt, it's an easy segue for somebody like that. So for you in the listening audience, you could be like, I was listening to this podcast from this guy who wrote this book, Debt Free or Die Trying. What do you think about that? Let's listen to this episode together and walk through these questions. So feel free to use this podcast to introduce that potentially awkward conversation in your life. Let's see here. So I'm on page 2. I'm gonna bring it back up for the people watching on YouTube. You have here, discuss who will pay for which bills. Let's walk through that. And actually, I think this is related. So it's discuss who will pay for which bills and will you have separate accounts or joint accounts?
Yes, very important. And that's one of the questions couples ask me often is how to handle that. So they can do it. The options are you can have one joint account, you can have separate accounts, or you can do a hybrid of both. And I recommend the hybrid. That's typically what works best for people. And that just means, so how we were going to do it or thinking about doing it was all the money that we earned prior to the marriage, we get to keep. And going into the marriage, I would keep a certain percent of my paycheck. He would keep a certain percent of his, and then another percent would go into a joint account for checking, like for bills, and then a joint account for savings, for things like kids' education or a house, things of that nature. And that typically works best for most couples. And you do it on a percentage basis. So that way, if one person makes significantly more than the other, it's equitable and it's fair.
So I guess I have a follow-up question there, and I think the listening audience might have the same. Did you do this through a lawyer, formally as a prenup, or did you facilitate yourself based on your expertise? And I guess the question I'm fundamentally asking there is for people who either want to go at it alone or find an expert lawyer, or is it fine to document it in writing? I assume you'd have to get it notarized on the legal side, or do they need that expert in their life? That legal expert?
I would recommend speaking to an attorney, for sure. That's one I'm for prenup and getting all of that advice. And I would actually also talk to a certified financial planner as well, because attorneys are great when it comes to prenups, but they more so understand the legal aspect and they don't understand the full ramifications all the time of the financial piece. So I would recommend speaking to both.
And for folks at home, I'll get some fee-only resources in your show description. I'm dropping it all the time. So that'll be in your video description in your podcast. I have 3 resources where you can get free fee-only certified financial planner. So let me make a note. CFP show notes. I've made promises before and people are like, Marcus, where the show notes at? I'm like, what you talking about? So that should be in the link by the time y'all watch this live. And then I'd say thematically, we're going to lighten it up. Not to say that this is dark, but I am ending on a high note as we move towards the wrap here, around towards the wrap. And I allude to that because in a few of these cases, and I think you talked about it earlier, if you say walk away if you do not trust each other, and don't be embarrassed to walk away if the situation does not serve you. Can you talk a little bit about the walk away process, which I think sounds simple in words, very difficult for people to do in action?
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, definitely try your best to work things out first. And I do think we exhausted all options. We went to therapy. We got our families involved. In one of my posts, I talk about individualistic and collectivist cultures. Do you know anything about that?
Individualist and collective. I don't. If I do, I haven't heard it phrased that way.
Okay. So he was Nigerian. That's a collectivist culture. So they're very much about the community, hierarchy, everything is for the whole, whereas America is very individualistic, right? And one of the great benefits of a collectivist culture is they seek advice from the elders. So we had like our families come in and give us advice and try to help us out and facilitate discussions too. So we tried everything possible and we just realized it wouldn't work. So I would definitely say exhaust all options. But then just try to move forward and take your lessons learned and don't make the same mistakes again. Have those conversations earlier so that you're not in a situation where you have to walk away at the last minute.
Okay, so for folks that have any follow-up questions, which I'm positive they do, they'll have to follow you on Instagram, and I'll get your social media before we wrap up here. And you can drop those as a 5-star review on the podcast. I'll be sure to read that into a future comment section. I only read comments from 5-star reviews, FYI. So you are incentivized to do so. But I'd be happy to drop your comments, and you heard some of those on this show. And like I said, we moved to a little bit of a lighter topic, potentially. It's actually a lighter topic with perhaps more controversy.